Welcome to Lesson 1, Part A, Simplifying Fraction Notes. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves when we're talking about simplifying fractions is, what does simplest form of a fraction mean? So oftentimes when we're simplifying fractions, you'll be told to put the fraction into simplest form. Now, a fraction is in simplest form when both the numerator and denominator, and I'm sorry that I'm left-handed because you can't read this while I'm writing. So when both the numerator and the denominator both have a GCF of 1. All right, I'll reread that for you since my hand was covering it. What does simplest form of a fraction mean? Well, a fraction is in simplest form when the numerator and the denominator both have a GCF of 1. Okay, now there's two major questions that we can ask ourselves when we're simplifying fractions. The first being, are the numbers in the numerator and the denominator both even numbers? If yes, then 2 is always a common factor. So an easy way to simplify our fraction, for example, if we had 6/8, we know that both 6 and 8 are even numbers, so we can divide them both by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And there we go, we have a simplified fraction of 3/4. Now, we're gonna go ahead and try one together. We're gonna try this one right here, 2/6. Again, 2 and 6 are both even numbers, so we can go ahead and divide them both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is going to equal 1 as the numerator. 6 divided by 2 is gonna equal 3 as the denominator. And there we go, we have a simplified fraction. We can go ahead and try the next one together. So we've got 20 over 24. Now we can go ahead and divide both of these by 2, which leaves us with 20 divided by 2 is 10 as our numerator. 24 divided by 2 is 12 as our denominator. Now, we still have 2 even numbers here, which means we can go ahead and divide these by 2 again, because we are not in simplest form yet. 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. 12 divided by 2 is going to be 6. Since we have an odd number in our fraction, right away we know that that has to be simplified. Now, every time you have an odd number in the fraction, it's not always in simplified form. I want to give you a chance to go ahead and try this next fraction on your own. If you'd like, you can go ahead and pause the video if you need more time, but go ahead and try that fraction on your own and then come back to check your answer. All right, you should have gotten a final answer of 2/3. Okay, now let's talk about another rule or question that we want to ask ourselves when we're simplifying fractions. And this is probably the most important rule right here. If you can do this step, then you can always simplify your fractions. So we need to ask ourselves, does the numerator and the denominator have any common factors? If yes, we want to divide the numerator and the denominator by their greatest common factor, or their GCF. So if we look here at this example, we've got 6/9. And we look at our factor chart, which you should all be able to have in front of you and use. We see that we actually have a common factor between 1 and 6. We've got a common factor of 3. Do you see that? Well, we've got a common factor of 1 and 3, but the greatest of the common factors is 3. So in this case, we can go ahead and divide by 3 to the numerator and the denominator. 6 divided by 3 is going to be 2 as our numerator. 9 divided by 3 is going to be 3 as our denominator. And we have a final fraction of 2/3. If you divide by the GCF, you will always get your fraction in the smallest simplified form. So let's go ahead and let's try 10 and 35. The first thing I want to do is I want to use my factor chart to find both of the numbers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find 10 and I'm going to find 35 and I'm going to circle my common factors. Well, I find that I've got common factors of 1 and 5, which means my GCF is going to be 5. So I'm going to go ahead and take the numerator and divide it by 5. Take the denominator and divide it by 5. When I take 10 divided by 5, I get a numerator of 2. When I take 35 divided by 5, I get a denominator of 7. Now, if you struggle with that division, remember that you can always use your multiplication chart. You can go to 5 on your multiplication chart, go over to 35, and then find what number multiplies by 5 to get to 7, because 35 divided by 5 would have to equal this number straight above the column. Okay? Now let's go ahead and try this next one, 16 and 32. Again, we're going to take a look at our factor chart. I'm going to find 16 and 32. I'm going to circle any common factors. I've got 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. Oh, well then in this case, I can actually divide by my GCF of 16. So let's go ahead and do that. I can take the numerator and divide it by 16, and the denominator and divide it by 16. Well, 16 divided by 16 leaves me with a numerator of 1. 32 divided by 16 leaves me with a denominator of 2. So I'm left with the fraction 1/2. Now, I want you to go ahead and try this last fraction on your own. Please, please, please use your factor or your multiplication chart to help you out. And go ahead and press play as soon as you're ready to check your answer. All right, so let's check this last one. If you used your factor chart, you should have found that 30 and 42 have a common factor of 6, or a greatest common factor of 6. So we can go ahead and divide by 6. 30 divided by 6 leaves me with 5 in my numerator, and 42 divided by 6 leaves me with 7 in my denominator. And there we go, we have our simplified fraction. I hope this video helped you. If you have any other questions, please see your teacher. And as soon as you are finished, go ahead and start the homework or practice for this lesson.